I would like to say that I am the product of independent India, because the British had left by 15th of August 47 and I was born in January 48. So in Mumbai. And then later on, my grandfather, natural grandfather, the late Chhatrapati Maharaj, he adopted me in 1962, I being his daughter's son. And since 62, I have been regularly here. Of course, I have been coming to Kolhapur right from the beginning, since my childhood also, and then regularly from 1962. Later, I joined school in Bangalore at Bishop Cotton Boys School. Still later, did my graduation from Indore University. And after that, I have been here.
So, tell me your memories of your childhood, when you were a child, when you would be, obviously before your studies, before you went out of Kolhapur, in your nascent childhood years. What was the life you remember like?
The life as a child was just like any other child. And we went to schools and schooling activity was there. And it included games, sports, academics, everything, entertainment, everything. And a little serious education really takes place much later, I think, in your college.
Yep, but you cannot say that you had a childhood like I would have. A Maharaja's child is always a Maharaja's child. So what is it like being a Maharaja's child?
I grew up in these royal surroundings, and we just took it in the stride. We didn't really feel that we are any different, even though now we know since the background was slightly different. And so we were brought up like any other children, along with the royal background.
So what is the royal background? Please explain.
Royal background means in those days, you could do some riding or shikar, and shikar, that is hunting, and that is much later, of course, not in the real childhood, but slightly later. And such other sports we could indulge in, which normally others wouldn't. So that is from the sporting point of view. But from meeting people, we met so many of them, even in our childhood and growing up. And of course later we keep meeting people. And you just get involved. My father, by that I mean my grandfather, who has adopted me now. That is, you see his picture over here. I'll start with his background from the Second World War itself. He was one of the two princes who had joined the Indian army. Many of them had joined, but it is one of the two princes who have really fought on the front. He was on the front in North Africa, in the Libyan and Tunisian areas, and later on he was asked by the government in his capacity as a Maharaja and as well as an army officer to visit several units in the Middle East as well as in Italy, where he met few of the generals, American generals, British generals, whose photographs you will see in the museum below. And still later, he was an excellent sportsman too, and an excellent administrator. And he laid the foundation for the way we should live henceforth also in the present world.
Which is?
Present world means like now that the princes are really in fact like any other people. They don't have any special privileges or anything. And of course people respect them. People respect us. That is different. But officially everyone is on par.
So did he set the ground then that that this is the way you should live? That you should have an ordinary life even when that time?
Yeah, he himself was a very simple person. He was fond of shikar too. Some of his trophies you will see over here. And otherwise he was a simple person. He loved the army life too. He joined during the war itself and did well.
Did he tell you all as children when you all were growing up about Second World War? Did he discuss wars with you all?
Yeah, sometimes he told us some incidents.
Would you like to relate one of them?
Like one of the incidents where he just escaped being killed by a bomb, but he lost, he damaged one of his ears seriously because of the concussion. So that was a near escape, as he said, and one or two other incidents also he told us.
Please relate.
One of those was how he had to fight a rear guard action against the Germans. He was in fact fighting the German forces under Rommel, Field Marshal Rommel, who was on the opposite side. And so he was a tough nut to crack, tough general to crack. So anyhow, so that is how it went on.
Please tell us the incident in detail, what you remember.
Once, as I said, he was sent out on a special mission it was one of the rear guard actions. So we had to hold them back. And for quite some time, there was no news of him coming back. Everyone got worried in the base camp or something, whatever it was. However, they got over it and they were all very happy when he came back.
Tell me something about your mother. Your mother, your mother who was your real mother, and Maharajji's wife who was actually your grandmother?
My mother, this Pramila Raji Chhatrapati, she was very much a Maharani and carried herself very well throughout. and along with the husband late Chhatrapati Maharaj, she took a world tour of 4 continuous months in 1961, and that in those days it was not so easy to get out of India, but still, since they had diplomatic passports in those days, it was easy for them to go about anywhere. And she also carried out work in the home, that is the palace over here, very well. Fond of cooking and everything, and generally like any other Indian housewife. She lived a long time too. She died recently in 1908 at the age of 97.
You're talking about your real mother, you're talking about your adoptive mother?
My adoptive mother, who is my grandmother.
And what about, did you have interactions with your real mother? What was her name? And
my parents lived in Nagpur, where my mother was given in marriage over there. Nagpur, in the Bhonsle family of Nagpur. And of course, since she was Maharaja's daughter, we used to come here every summer for 2 months. Everyone was here, and she was also favorite of the late Maharaja, that is Rajaram Chhatrapati Maharaja. And in fact, as soon as she was born, she was more or less taken over by the late Rajaram. And she also went through all her early life. She spent over a year only, and indulged herself in all sorts of royal activities like riding, hunting and everything at an early age too. Formal education in those days was done at home. They didn't have to go to any schools. The staff came to teach them.
So your mother was educated?
She was fond of, she was fond of reading, very much fond of reading. She had a good library of her own. And she was well read, like her father.
And did your mother, your grandmother, which is your adopted mother, did she do some philanthropic activities also, or she was only involved in the upkeep of the palace?
Philanthropic activities were carried out basically through the Maharajas. Not directly by them.
So at that time, was the women, were your mothers in Parda system or things like that?
No, in Parda, as you know, my great grandfather, this Rajashri SHAHU Maharaj, who was also a social reformer and who is a very important figure in not only in Maharashtra, I think maybe in all India, because he has been a social reformer. And particularly in Maharashtra, he had led the social reforms in a royal manner. And 3 persons are known for social reforms in Maharashtra in particular. That is Mahatma Phule, Rajashri SHAHU Chhatrapati Maharaj, and Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who later on went to he had a land share in formulating the Constitution of India. Baba Saheb Ambedkar was also, I won't call him as his product, but he had seen qualities in him, and which he told the people that here is a future leader. This is in 1900, approximately 1920, around about that. When he had predicted, he was not an astrologer, but he predicted, because of his knowledge about the person, that he'll be a future very important leader of India and of the leader of the backward classes also. So he did go on later on, 28 years later, to formulate the Constitution of India. Talking about women. Women have been emancipated during his time. I mean, they were emancipated already in our circle. In the Marathas hardly ever practiced parda. But a little bit of parda, which may have been practiced in between, was done away with at the end of 19th century. And the system of parda is just not there, like you may see in northern India. And the women, ladies in the family, they could meet anyone, any guest along with everyone.
So how did your father and your grandfather treat women in their own families? I mean, how they were empowered, or what kind of the princely, which is different than the other princely families of India?
Well, as I said, there was much more liberal atmosphere over here, and they were given certain activities to be carried out, but mostly they, in her case, in my mother's case, it was more domestic rather than political or such. It was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj who started the Swarajya over here in Maharashtra first of all. Swarajya means independent from Mughal rule, which was prevalent at that time. And his Swarajya extended in lots right up to Chennai. That is near Jinji was his fort of southernmost fort, which is near Chennai. And the northern parts were from Nashik right up to Chennai. Along that, you can say, along that national highway, both sides of the national highway, and Western Ghats, Konkan, and that way was Swarajya, which was eventually he died early, and then it was once again the country was again taken over by Aurangzeb, but still the capital of the Swarajya was shifted to Jinji by Rajaram Maharaj, his Shivaji Maharaj's younger son. And from there rearguard action took place, and by the time he came back to Maharashtra, the whole of Maharashtra was almost recaptured by his generals, Santaji Ghorpade and Danaji Jadhav. And people were fighting everywhere. It was a guerrilla warfare in those days, and even in the beginning, Shivaji's time, it was guerrilla warfare. Later on also guerrilla warfare, and the whole of Maharashtra had lighted up. And eventually a Mughal emperor who had ruled from Delhi for such a long time he had to spend 27 years in Maharashtra fighting the Marathas and the Swarajya movement. Eventually he died here only, and he is buried in a simple, I think, tomb near Kolhapur in Aurangabad. So eventually everything was recovered and everything. In between, due to some reason or the other, because of the enterprising people, the Britishers came in, took full advantage of the divisions over in India, and eventually became the masters of India. So that is a time when the whole of the country was under the domination, and particularly Kolhapur was ruled by minor princes for quite some time, and it was during his time, Rajashri Chhatrapati SHAHU Maharaj's time, when he became the major. Again he got his powers back to rule. He had been liberally educated also. There were some Britishers who also guided him, some liberal Britishers who were probably not so imperialistic. So they guided him, and others of course in Kolhapur also. And eventually he saw the drawbacks of society over here. Why the British came in, what was the problems, and how India will now move on to a real democratic country in the future. He had visualized that, and towards that end he started working, and his reforms, he reformed every movement in Kolhapur, which influenced not only Maharashtra government, but I think the basics of social reforms are from Kolhapur, followed by Maharashtra government, and now they are spreading to the rest of India all too. So his idea was, unless you have equality in humanity, there is no point in the humanity itself. But to achieve that, you must have education. And so he was encouraged education in every field during his lifetime in Kolhapur and elsewhere also in Maharashtra, elsewhere in India too, right from Madhya Pradesh to Karnataka. And so education was encouraged, women's education was also given. Young girls were, for them also education was made compulsory and free in those days. In those days, I think 6% of our income was spent on education, the state. I think it is not more than 2% now, right now. But a lot of emphasis was given on education, development of agriculture by building one of the first dams in India. And in every, you just name any aspect of life or any facet of life, his stamp is there. Politically also.
So how did the Britishers treat Kolhapur state at that time? What was their relationship with your great-grandfather?
By then, there was no conflict as such. There was no military conflict as such because they had become paramount already. The British had become paramount already. So the question of a military conflict at that time, say at the end of the 19th century, did not arise. Then the real conflict was progress. Progress in a manner in which you want to progress, and progress in the manner which the British wanted everyone to progress. They wanted to, of course, hold on forever, and we had to prepare for the future to become an independent country. So you had to get along with them. Not that you may have liked it very much, but you had to get along. But I wouldn't say everything was bad with the Britishers. Some of the things are very good, like they had a system of judiciary, legislatures, execution, which they had separated in their time too. And some of them encouraged liberal education also. Not the government. The government also did a lot of things, and so there were things were moving parallel, but with different aims and objectives.
So how were they treating? I mean, how was your father in the British times keeping it, because he went to fight World War II, keeping it at that time? How did your father? Because Kolhapur estate did not have much interference of British as such prior to other estates.
Very much. They had a lot of interference.
Okay.
Before 1894, or you can say till 84, to be more precise, till Maharaja came into the picture. He was born in 74. The British interfered a lot in Kolhapur also. And in those days, in the beginning, they were not interested in the welfare of the state or in the people. They were really interested in keeping their empire going as long as they could. That was their aim. And naturally, when SHAHU Maharaj, as he grew up, he saw how it should be not only in Kolhapur but for India in the future. And so through him a generation of educated Indians came up through his system of boardings. Like there are several boardings were established in the beginning of the 20th century, and through them a lot of leaders have emerged today, right from Yashwantrao Chavan and so many others, who became the backbone of administration in India in the last century.
So was Kolhapur estate run by, when your father was running it, was it very autonomous on its functioning?
Actually, I'll tell you a little bit. He became, my father, Shahaji Maharaj, he became Chhatrapati in 1947, just before India got independence. And he himself had a small time, small means a little less time to really do work over here. But still, formerly he was Maharaja of Devas also, when he joined the army. So he joined the army in 1940, I think, and till 46 he was in the army as a regular officer in the Indian Army. Of course, he didn't have to keep fighting for the full 6 years. I think he spent quite some time in the North African deserts, those two countries, Libya and that area. And later on, as I said, that was the real front. But later on, he also visited front, but he was not in the fighting units, but he was just visiting. And through that activity, he came to more in contact. He was already in contact, but more so with the Britishers. And he had, everyone was friendly on a personal level. Personal level, no one had anything against each other. But ultimately, you have to have your own ideas, and they have to be free from any encumbrances. So, to be part of the army, he had a flair for it, and so he did well.
So your grandfather basically had more interaction with the Britishers than
No,
your father.
SHAHU Maharaj had, Rajaram Maharaj had, Shahji Maharaj had, all three of them had. In between there was 5-year period of minority. Again, between 42 and 47.
What do you mean by minority?
Rajaram Maharaj had died in 1940. And there was a Chhatrapati, a youngster, who was put over here. But unfortunately, he also died in 46 or so. Then he was taken in as late Maharaja's, SHAHU Maharaj's daughter's son. He was also adopted over here in 47. So he came to Kolhapur actually in 47.
No, but you said there was a minority.
Minority,
42
yeah.
to 46. So 42, who was the person ruling?
He was a minor king. You can say minor Maharaja. But since he was about a few years old, one cannot rule.
So who was ruling instead of him?
In those days, it was a council, a minority council, which was ruling. But in effect, it was the British who were dictating. In between 40 and 46, between 42 and 46, there was a minor Chhatrapati over here, and during that time, Kolhapur was governed by an executive council headed by my late Rajaram Maharani, but she didn't do much work over there. It was actually the British, through the British resident over here. The state must have been, the policies must have been laid out by him. And so, therefore, it is not certain how the Polish came to Kolhapur, how Kolhapur was selected, and who selected it. That I cannot say. Possibly someone, the Viceroy may have, of course he knew Kolhapur because two Viceroys have visited Kolhapur before, in the 30s, in the 20s, and one in the 20s, one in the 30s. So interaction with the British was there. In fact, Kolhapur state, while had also contributed towards the effort in different ways also in the war effort, in the First World War as well as in the Second World War. But now we are talking of the Second World War. So the British may have suggested, why don't you ask Kolhapur if they can adjust the refugees, because Kolhapur, as they knew, was always a place where everyone was welcome, and it has a tradition to welcome everyone. Kolhapur has a tradition to welcome everyone, so that compared to many other cities like Kolhapur, it's a cosmopolitan town. In those days, SHAHU Maharaj also had invited traders from Gujarat to do trade, to take over the trade of jaggery. and they were settled here, and they're still here. They have been living here for more than 100 years now. The future generations have become part of Kolhapur. And just to put one step ahead, the camp area where the Polish people, Polish refugees were kept, has now become a center for Sindhi refugees who came in later, and they have been settled in the same place. Everyone was welcome to Kolhapur. That is the tradition. And so, once upon a time, even Aurangzeb's son Akbar, who had rebelled against his father, he was the guest of the Chhatrapati family. In the maybe in the 1680s. 1680s, in that decade too. So that particular son of Emperor Aurangzeb, later on he went to Iran from Kolhapur, this area, and he eventually died over there. This is side passage. So what I'm trying to say is Kolhapur has always been a place where people could come in. Hospitality was there throughout. That is till 67. I hardly knew them. I think there was no interaction with them. And after that also, since the refugees had left, there could not have been any interaction. Then later on they started coming in touch with Kolhapur again. And some of them started visiting over here to find out what has happened to the place, where they were living, and so on. And I must say, one of my friends, Colonel Vijay, he got in touch with them again, because his father's generation, his father and his generation were in some sort of contact with them when the Polish people were living in Valivade. And still later, the real contact was Mrs. Wanda. What's her surname? Kashikar. Mrs. Wanda Kashikar. We met somehow somewhere. And then later we used to meet once a year or so. And that is the real interaction with the Polish people who have stayed over here. And then, of course, some of them were coming, as I said, were coming from time to time visiting the place. And some of them they dined here, and we were together for some evenings over here also. They have given me one disc of Polish music also in those days, that 33 RPM record of Polish classical music. And some of them had come for my son's wedding. much later, that is late 90s. And we have been meeting on and off over here, a little bit. But really we didn't, unlike Colonel Gaikwad, who came in very close contact with them, my contact has been on the periphery.
But what have been the interactions? They must have when they met you.
No, they were very happy. A lot of photographic sessions took place, and right here when about 30 of them had come once, and that photograph must be there somewhere, I think.
Talk to you about the days in Valivade, Kolhapur?
Little bit.
What did they share? Do you remember anything which they shared?
They used to say people used to come and visit there, some people here, and then socially some of them got active, some married, eventually some married over there, some persons over there, and one of them like Wanda, she married here and lived here, and that's it.
What was your interaction with Wanda? Do you remember? Did she have any?
Well, she was, I think, she must have, when she died, she must have been very much above 95.
She's 90, died 90.
90. Okay. Well, she used to come just once a year, and we used to meet once a year.
Did she share?
She used to bring some sweets, and we shared the sweets.
And did anybody?
Her grandson, her grandson's wife. Her grandson's wife is today also teaching in one of our schools over here. Her daughter's son's wife.
And did Vanda share her childhood, what she spent sometime when she came to meet you once a year?
No, nothing much. Nothing much.
Did she share about her marriage to Vasant Kashikar, that was her husband?
No, we met together, I think many years back we met together once.
And anybody, so if I ask you about your views on Kolhapur estate or Valivade coming under Kolhapur estate, giving shelter practically to 5,000 Polish refugees and building generations, what would your thoughts be, or what would your, how would your father, your forefathers look at that?
Well, they always looked at it from this point of view that apart from everything else, humanitarianism should be given prime importance to. And this was a humanitarian act, knowing how they suffered at the hands of Hitler and Stalin. So that must have been the main consideration key to give them. Well, as I said, there was a minority government in Kolhapur at that time, which was indirectly controlled by the Britishers, and Britishers were quite happy to pass on the buck to Kolhapur, and that is how they initially came. But since the nature of the Kolhapuri people is very very receptive to anyone from outside, they became friendly, and eventually they were looked at as friends, not refugees anymore. In the beginning they came in as refugees, they left as friends. That is their side of the feeling, possibly, the gratitude. And they must have felt that way, because give 5,000 refugees and look at them as friends. And Kolhapur did that in the whole of India, Jamnagar and Kolhapur. So naturally, they've had that affinity with the people of Kolhapur since then. So as I said, the word gratitude will come from them, not from us. They will be feeling that way. And that gratitude they have been expressing by keeping in touch with us.
Right.
Racial problems, I don't think they arose over here. Of course, both were, as you call them, white. We can call them Europeans. Both of them, the British as well as Polish. And of course, they were foreigners. Both are foreigners. British came in here as traders and became our rulers. And the Polish came here as refugees and became our friends. That is the difference. In the beginning, of course, there wasn't idea, but when the people started coming over here, Polish people started coming over here, and also my friend Colonel Vijay, of course, the older generation must have known about it, but I personally did not know of it for quite some time because there was nothing to read or there was no information about it at all, about the camp in Jamnagar. My wife, she's about 4 years younger than me, and she was originally from the adjoining district of Belgaum, and we were married in 1970. We have 2 sons, Sambhaji and Maloji. The wives, Sanyogita and Madhurima, and 3 grandchildren, one for the eldest, Sambhaji, who is doing his 11th standard at Symbiosis, Pune now, and the younger one has a daughter who is the 10th standard now, and a son who is in the 7th standard, 6th standard.
So how does your day look like?
A day, a lot of time is taken over with administration of some educational institutions, giving them guidance and everything.
Because I know you do a lot of philanthropy, so I'd like you to talk about that.
Philanthropy these days is really through educational activities. Not just philanthropy like just gifting this and gifting that to this or but you have to do it more in a more practical way. You have to see that more people are educated, more children are educated in the best possible way and with the minimum of cost, at a minimum cost, not at the best educated at the highest cost. Education, as you know, has been an important factor in everyone's life, every Maharaja's life in Kolhapur, right from the end of the 19th century. And since then, a lot of educational activities have taken place in Kolhapur. Boardings have been established, schools have been established, free education of girls and is there. That is due to the state period. One of the oldest colleges in Kolhapur was also started in 1884. It's called the Maharaja of College. In fact, it is 1 year older than the Ferguson College at Pune. And it was the only college between Pune and Bangalore in those days. So not the college.
So most of your day goes in giving inputs to educational institutions?
Yeah, most of it. And of course, agriculture is the base of any Maharaja in this time.
What are you fond of personally? What are your, let's call it intellectual property? I won't call it hobbies.
We'll call them hobbies also. Reading, as you say, you can call it very fond of reading. A little less these days than the former days. We have a nice library of our own, personal library, consisting about 6,000 books, and which we have right now placed in one of our schools. But I keep using it from over there. Apart from the school library, this is the personal library. And then hunting had been a favorite sport for all the Maharajas. And one of the sport related to hunting was pig sticking. It was a hunting, spearing the pig from the back of a horse. Then another sport which was practiced over here was hunting of the black buck with a trained cheetah. And of course, they are all helpers. You have to only keep giving them encouragement to do all that. Then modern sports like football is there. I have taken up to football over here, which was started in Kolhapur around about 1980, when one Prince Shivaji who came back from England at that time, he started sport over here. Wrestling had been and has been there traditionally, and it has produced a lot of good wrestlers.
Have you been in wrestling?
Yes, I have done it the traditional way for 6 or 7 years continuously. But way back, more than 40 years, 50 years back, you can say. Not 50, about 40 years back.
So today, what's your philosophy in life?
It's a very difficult question. You have to do your best in everything you want to, in every field, in any field you want interested in. Well, I am not the philosophy, as you say. We are not philosophers. First of all, we are more down to earth. Philosophers will be thinking high and giving us a direction. That's okay. But we make use of the philosophy, and we have our own philosophy, which is you must be down to earth. You must do what is best for the people. You must do what is best for the society. You must eradicate what is bad in the society.